Today, let's discuss why I think that copper tools should be added to Minecraft and how they would greatly benefit the progression of the game, as well as, well, not downright fixing, but certainly alleviating some of the major gameplay problems introduced with the new Caves and Cliffs update, due to the ore distribution. But, before we get ahead of ourselves, we should cover briefly why copper was even added in the first place, and why the Caves and Cliffs update was not a mistake. It just wasn't executed very well. Because I know some players actually refuse to play after version 1.16, the Nether update, due to Caves and Cliffs' many problems. And you know what? They're not exactly wrong. Their reasoning is absolutely fair and understandable. So let's explain what happened. Copper ore as an ore has been in Minecraft for an extremely long time actually, just not officially. There were, and still are, dozens of mods and mod packs that would each add their own form of copper for various tech and progression uses. Copper has had more of an existing history with Minecraft than almost every other new feature added post-World of Color. But, big deal, right? I hear some saying. Copper's useless in Minecraft's base game. Why add it at all? Just let the mods be mods. No. Copper being here is a very good thing. See, the problem with all of these mods is pretty much that every single one of them uses its own different and completely incompatible copper ore. You need to mine a different copper ore for each and every mod that adds it. They aren't stackable, and they don't craft or smelt together. Mojang adding copper officially doesn't fix these old mods, but it makes sure that any new mods have a universal copper ore to work with, so you're not stuck with an inventory that looks like this. I don't like how much that tin looks like diamond.
Ace, there's three different types of copper in this one image.
Alright, so copper being in the game should be a good thing. Why do other players hate it so much? Aside from not having many uses, why does copper get hated on so much, but something like lapis gets a pass? Lapis does have an important use with enchanting for one, but in a very artificial way. See, enchanting didn't actually used to need lapis. They just gave it something to do other than blue dye, as new flowers suddenly made using lapis for just that ridiculous. As if using lapis for blue dye wasn't ridiculous to begin with. The difference is, lapis is rare and can be largely ignored until the player is ready for enchanting, while copper is absolutely everywhere. But it's worse than just that, and this is why players stay behind. The new ore distribution has all but replaced iron with copper, destroying player retention and bringing the early gameplay progression to an absolute crawl. Let's rewind a bit and go back in time to an earlier version. I'm using an X-ray pack that I picked up from a frankly shady place, combined with a shader that can be tuned to make just the iron ore glow in the dark. This is the iron ore distribution at spawn, in the older version of Minecraft, right around sea level just under the surface. Here, progressing from wood to stone to then iron should take about 5 minutes, if even that. It's quick to fully grab iron tools, with plenty around to eventually gather some full armor, a shield, a bucket, flint and steel, and even some backup tools if you want to get right into mining. Compare this to the amount of iron in the ground in new versions of the game. Yikes. It's entirely possible to start a new mine and dig all the way down to bedrock and not get enough iron for a single pickaxe, let alone armor. I myself have played several worlds in recent versions where I grabbed myself TNT to mine diamonds before my first iron pickaxe. And I'll forget up until I find one in a chest days later and get jump scared by, it's iron, isn't pick? So I usually save what little iron I find for shields and buckets, plus sometimes corner rails and minecarts. Now, this is partially my fault because I found a great spawn and decided to build right there. See, iron actually does spawn far more frequently in higher elevations now. Just look at this mountain compared to where we spawned earlier. So, we're looking in the wrong place. What's the big deal? Well, our spawns are kind of the problem. See, terrain actually gets more extreme about 1,000 blocks out, and it's possible that a spawn will be devoid of any good mountains for that 1,000 block limit. To put that in perspective, if you've ever played a legacy version of Minecraft on Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Wii U, etc., that's about the distance of your entire world border to border that you might have to walk just to get good iron spawns. Or are they even good? Another problem is that these mountains contain a noticeable increase in iron compared to the rest of the modern world, yes, but compared to earlier versions, it's hardly an improvement. It comes out to about the same as just the natural old world's iron distribution everywhere. Now, I get why iron spawns less. Now that it drops in chunks, you can finally use fortune on it. But we're talking the early game here, and I don't think you've got a Fortune 3 stone pickaxe on you, do you? Not to mention how backwards the mining progression is to go high up and then go all the way down to deep slate to go from the best iron spawns to diamond. Made especially painful with the new height and depth of caves and cliffs compared to the, in retrospect, pretty thin world of old Minecraft. Now, I'd be lying if I said that the new caves and cliffs themselves aren't a huge improvement over the frankly boring terrain of post 1.0 release Minecraft, but pre-caves and cliffs. Don't worry, beta, you're excused from this criticism, your terrain is cool. But man do I love the new terrain generation and the caves. It's just the ore distribution. Yes, it is possible to get lucky iron spawns right away, but it's also possible to not. And I don't think everyone working a brutal shift wants to come home to potentially spend their little free time that night just trying to get a full set of iron tools and armor for the next day. It's already going to take longer to progress anyway due to how much deeper the world is, plus the slow mining speed of deep slate once you get down there. Although, a simple trick to help if you're still just looking for iron and hit deep slate, go back up about 8 blocks, because once you've hit deep slate, you've gone too deep. At that point, you just need to go 8 blocks up from the deep slate, and that's ideal iron spawn if you don't have a mountain. But also think about how deep that is to go without armor and still on just stone tools versus just grabbing at least some iron equipment near the surface in older versions. And it's not even so much that iron takes longer to get that I mind, but why does more time need to be spent on just upgrading past stone? But I actually don't think the ore distribution should be reverted. It just needed to be thought out a little better. Iron really was crazy easy to get, and having an actual reason to mine at high elevations is a neat idea. The mountains would go fairly unexplored otherwise. The problem is simply how slow the regular progression feels now. This is where copper tools come in. From a basic concept, if they were iron level, but just weaker, they would fill iron's old progression role, but without being as useful as iron. I mean, copper spawns basically exactly how old iron used to spawn. Why not let it fill the old role, but be a slightly worse version? One of the concerns with copper tools that I hear is that there would be no reason to even grab iron tools. You could just use copper to skip straight to diamond. And while yes, copper's weaker than iron, with the absolute abundance of copper, you could absolutely just craft a bunch of copper pickaxes and organize your inventory by putting junk blocks in a bundle.
Oh wait, you don't have bundles!
Okay, well, ignoring that issue, 1, that requires having a bundle in the first place, which is very unlikely at this stage, or impossible depending on your platform. 2, it's pretty annoying to be constantly replenishing pickaxes, even if you do have an abundance of sticks and copper on you. And 3, even if copper was functionally better than iron, it still would never replace it, because there's no copper shield, yet. There's no copper buckets, no copper rails, no copper minecarts, no copper dispensers, there's no copper anvils, no copper smithing tables, no flint and copper, and no copper golems, as we are painfully aware. But even if there were, these little guys aren't going to protect your village from monsters like iron ones are going to. Right? Huh. Well, the point is, iron has far too many uses to be ignored entirely. So, could you use just a copper pickaxe and go right to diamond? Well, yeah, but so what if an iron pickaxe gets ignored in a run? When's the last time you made a wooden sword? Or any gold tools? Plus, there's still an achievement tied to that, which requires finding or crafting one. Hell, maybe a rascal could toss you one. Oh, wait. Basically, copper tools would be an easy and great step to restoring the old progression without needing to revert anything about the ore distribution or terrain generation. And that's if copper is just iron but weaker. But what if you do get lucky and find plenty of iron right away? Is copper too weak? Do we just skip that now? Well, there is a mod that I have that has a much more interesting idea with copper. The Pure Copper Tools mod is a great example of what could be done to make copper a consideration even if you already have iron tools. And over the course of me playing regular survival worlds with this mod installed, it has quickly become my favorite copper tool and armor implementation of the countless other copper mods I've tried. To explain it simply, each oxidation level of copper has its own ingots and can be crafted into tools and armor, as unfortunately the tools and armor don't actually oxidize on their own. You have to leave them out in a block like you normally would and wait. With each new level of oxidation, the tools become tougher and tougher in durability, even surpassing iron eventually, but with a big downside. Each level of oxidation takes away more enchantability, eventually going all the way from gold level enchanting to something as pitiful as diamond, while not being nearly as fast or durable as diamond. It could still be worth enchanting if you don't have diamonds to spare but have plenty of levels to burn, but usually you would want to use fully oxidized copper if you aren't able to enchant at full level yet, and when you start getting there, maybe instead of iron, you could use a clean copper tool to enchant and aim for unbreaking to cover its weaker durability. With clean copper being easier to enchant than iron, it is a safer tool to use if you don't have a lot of levels or lapis to spare yet. It's basically what gold wishes it could be. And that reminds me, what reason do gold tools and armor have to exist over copper? Now, I've also heard that copper tools would be too unrealistic, which, mate, copper tools was our actual progression after stone as the human species. Not to mention, some copper tools are still in use in certain conditions over iron. Why? Well, for gardening, copper doesn't risk contaminating nutrients in the soil like iron oxide does. Copper also doesn't rust in humid environments like iron does. And importantly, in a mine where gas leaks are possible, copper pickaxes don't cause sparks like iron ones do. As for swords, I mean, they were actually a thing at some point, but there's a reason we don't see them anymore. Still, if they break, they are stupid easy to recast and work harden compared to forging a whole new iron sword. Point is, copper tools not being realistic isn't even an argument. So, even if we don't have the oxidizing mechanics for the tools, copper would fit nicely in the game in a natural and yes, realistic way for progression by simply making them iron-level tools that do slightly less damage than iron and aren't as durable. I feel like a long time ago players had this very same discussion with emerald tools, or actually ruby, as they were back then before they were changed to emerald to be more visually clear against redstone. But unlike potential ruby tools, which didn't fit into the progression system that didn't need them, modern Minecraft kind of dug itself into a hole where it needs another tool to fix the working progression system that they broke. And to get out of this hole that Mojang has dug themselves into, all they need to dig themselves out is a simple copper shovel. So that about does it for this ramble on why copper tools and even armor should be in the game. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and try not to rage too hard. Or do, it helps the algorithm. Either way, that's all for now. Subscribe! Gotta shill it in there somewhere.